Welcome everyone. It looks like people are just starting to enter in, so we'll give it a few seconds before we get going. But thank you very much for joining this morning. Just kick off with a little bit of, housekeeping while people begin to trickle in. So welcome to this LifeQI webinar. Today we're going to discuss all about how UK healthcare providers are using LifeQI to enable quality improvement across their organisations. This is a series of webinars. This is the second of which that we've run. I'm going to be running on a kind of an ongoing basis. What we found from working with healthcare providers, particularly in the UK, over the last probably 6 years, is that as they progress along their improvement journeys, there are many challenges to overcome. And we found that appropriate use of technology can be a powerful enabler in helping address and overcome many of these challenges. So in this webinar today, we're going to spend a bit of time laying out some of those key challenges and how we've seen organisations begin to tackle them, particularly how they're using LifeQI to engage staff in quality improvement, to build improvement skills, and to execute and track improvement projects, basically. Before we dive into the real subject matter, just a little bit of a kind of introduction from us. So, hello everyone, my name is Jason, part of the LifeQI team here. Thank you for joining today, and I'm joined by my colleague Andrew, who's going to be sort of supporting me, and he's particularly going to be managing the kind of the Q&A and the chat. So if you've got any questions you want us to pick up as we go through today's session, please put them into the Q&A, or any more general comments, please throw them into the chat. They can either come direct to us or to all participants as you wish. And if you want to kick off in the chat with just kind of where you're from or which organisation you're representing, then please do that. It's always great to hear kind of where people are dialing in from. The other thing we'll probably do today is launch a couple of kind of feedback polls during the course of today's session. So just real quick fire, multiple choice kind of questions to answer. They're quite helpful. As we said, we've based this webinar on a number of challenges, essentially, that we're seeing organisations face. So the polls are a bit of an opportunity to gather some more data around those and find out a little bit more about who's online as well. So if you see those pop up on the screen, you can just click your sort of relevant choice. And if there's time at the end, we'll try and feed back some answers. I think last bit of housekeeping is that as a webinar, this is being recorded, so we will send out the recording by email. So you're free to watch it back at your leisure, particularly if you need to drop off early. You're welcome to share that with colleagues as well, as you wish. And if there's anything that we don't really get into enough detail with today, or you'd like just an opportunity to talk to us on more of a one-to-one basis, then we'll share details of how to reach out to us and get in contact. We'd love to set up a more in-depth conversation with yourselves when relevant. Okay, that's the housekeeping done. Let's sort of start to get stuck in. I guess normally on these sessions, the audience is pretty new to LifeQI or has sort of no kind of real understanding or experience of LifeQI. It's just a very brief bit of an introduction to kind of what it is, basically, and then we'll go into the kind of the meat of the subject. LifeQI is a web platform for running and tracking healthcare improvement projects, essentially. It was first developed back in 2015 with a couple of NHS organisations back then. So it's been around a little while, predominantly used here in the UK, but also used in a number of countries around the world. About 50% of the user base is here in the UK and 50% internationally now. So we have customers, I guess, interaction with a range of different health and social care organisations kind of around the world, and that's where a lot of this subject matter has come from, really. Let's move on to kind of the challenges, really, and just sort of describe them in a little bit more detail before we look at how we're essentially addressing those. So these are by no means an exhaustive list of challenges faced by healthcare organisations when they're looking to do quality improvement, but from our experience, which is mainly with kind of acute mental health, community and ambulance trust providers, both in the NHS and kind of more in the independent sector, we've kind of come up with these themes time and time again. As I said, not an exhaustive list, but certainly some of the either most intractable issues or most common issues. And we find this both with organisations that are kind of starting out on their QI journey, and maybe just sort of forming a team and trying to get board support, but also there are some of the challenges that remain almost throughout that improvement journey, even when you've got a sort of more established improvement team and kind of more structure. Some of these challenges kind of remain, basically. So we've got some interesting insights into how they affect people, and what we just want to play back is a little bit about how organizations are using LiveQI to address some of those. So just to briefly talk through the individual challenges. Engaging staff in QI, this is certainly probably the most common one that we hear about. Just that constant challenge of how do we engage often frontline staff and teams in carving out the time to work on improvement activities. LiveQI is by no means a silver bullet that will kind of solve that issue, but the angle or the place that LiveQI has in that challenge is often about making QI accessible for staff and providing visibility and making it straightforward. And we'll begin to look at that in a few moments. Another one, perhaps not as difficult a challenge, but certainly a very common challenge, and something that a lot of QI teams are focused on, is around building improvement skills, particularly in the earlier stages of the QI journey, but it is something that goes on throughout. And that's, how do we build that capacity within the organization? How do we build up that skill set? Range of different ways and types of QI training that the organizations are running. And again, how we feed LiveQI into that is how do we help make QI achievable for staff around the organization? How do we make it simple for them to be able to carry out that kind of activity? And then the third challenge we've got up here is really about executing on kind of project. So when staff have got an idea for an improvement project, how do we make sure that we are effectively executing on those ideas and those projects? And if people are going to carve out the time for it, how do we make sure that they use that time effectively and that those projects stand the best possible chance of success? And that's perhaps really where LiveQI kind of comes into its own. So again, we'll look at that in a minute. You might have already seen at least the first poll pop up. So thank you for answering that if you've had a chance. What we're going to do now is we'll actually start to dive into LiveQI itself, and give you a bit of a look around and start to talk about how various aspects of the functionality speak to those challenges. Before we go too much further, just to give you a bit of a basic introduction to navigation, as it were. So this is what LiveQI looks like. Once you've logged in, you come into your start page. You've got this main menu down the left-hand side that outlines all the different areas that make up the system. Excuse me. We're not going to go through all of those in detail today, but we'll touch on a few of the major ones. A couple of things to point out. Start page, you can see my pretty picture, my name at the top. So everyone that has an account comes in, they've got their own start page. And one of the key reasons for that is that my experience of the platform is kind of tailored to me. So a lot of staff are working on one or two improvement projects. They can come in, they can see their projects listed out here, and they can dive straight into their projects. Again, part of the challenge is making it straightforward for staff. How do they find the information associated with their project, or how do they find out about what other QI work's taking place? We've structured LiveQI in such a way that it makes it nice and straightforward. There's no kind of complicated navigation. I'm here to work on my pressure source project. There it is on the first page. I click on it, I can get straight into updating it. And there's a few other pieces, kind of all the things that you're connected to or linked to in LiveQI you can access from your start page, as well as going through kind of the more detailed navigation down the left-hand side, essentially. What we're going to jump into next is the projects area. So projects are they're really the heart of LiveQI. It's most people are here to set up a new project or to work on an existing project. So when I first click into here, I see a list of projects. And this is an opportunity for you to begin to understand what's going on around the organization. So I can filter this list to just my projects, but what I'm looking at here is my organization's projects. So this will be everything that's active across my entire organization. I can see what we're working on, the aims of those projects, who's running it, the level of progress as shown by these scores, and I can click into these projects and have a look around, see what's going on within the organization. As well as just browsing, if I want to search for a particular subject, I can just search for, pressure sores. I've got an idea. I can see that, okay, there's already lots of people working on pressure sores. I can perhaps go and learn from them, read up on their projects, speak to them. So one of the first parts or ways in which people experience LiveQI, it's often not necessarily starting a project, but let's have a look around what's going on within our organization. And using this as this live repository, and often for the first time, people can really see the details of what's going on, and not just there's some intranet site somewhere that talks about old projects, but this is all the old projects, all the current projects, all the projects that are being planned at the moment, and really providing a lot more visibility than you might otherwise get with some of the more traditional sort of project registers that the people might come across. So yeah, you can search through, see what else is going on within your organization. It's also possible to see what other organizations are doing if they've chosen to share it. So if you're in the UK, you can look into the UK system, and some organizations quite openly share their projects, all of them, some of them, or if you're part of a particular regional group activity, or you're part of an ICS and you're kind of using it across the ICS, you can choose to what extent you want to share your projects and with whom you want to share them. So that's quite a powerful enabler in connecting teams and providing even greater visibility across the piece, basically. What we're going to show now is sort of starting a project, just the very basics of getting going with a project. This is a really important part of it. You know, you will want to engage staff in doing QI. You need to make sure that it's easy for them to actually start this kind of work, basically. So from this projects list, we can click the create a new project button, take a second to load up, and then there's a short project wizard that will kind of work through. There's just a few steps to get going with kind of registering your project, basically. Few fields to go through. There's only a few of them that are mandatory. My new QI project. Nothing particularly exciting about what I'm going to type in here. Yeah, you've got to give it a title. Most of the rest of these fields you can skip over and come back to later. So if someone just wants to kind of register almost just their idea for a project, they haven't really scoped it out yet, they can do that and come back later. There's then a few charter fields that you can work through, such as things like the problem statement or the aim statement. Some staff, they know what these things are and they can easily kind of fill them out. If they're fairly new to QI and they need to kind of engage, then there's these little tooltips, little information icons, and you can click on those and it will give you a bit of guidance on how to fill out the field that's kind of in front of you, basically. So that's particularly useful for kind of new staff getting started. I'm going to skip over these fields for now, just for the purpose of kind of demonstrating how easy it is to charter a project. There's an element here around one of the kind of governance steps that we can introduce. So particularly the more established kind of QI kind of organizations, there's a certain amount of governance that's expected around these projects, particularly when it comes to kind of the reporting side of things. One that's quite common is wanting to link every project to the division or department or directorate that it's taking place in. So here, as part of this, we've got it hooked up so that there is a mandatory step. We have to link our project to one of our divisions. Here is a list of our divisions, and I'm going to link this one to cardiac division. That's where that's taking place. Make that linkage there. And that's then going to appear in the reports and the dashboards that are relevant to that particular division so that their reporting is complete and accurate, nice and straightforward. I can invite other colleagues to join the project from here as well. I won't do that just now, but that's where the first opportunity to open up that visibility and that membership. A lot of organizations have improvement priorities or just sort of organizational level priorities or objectives. You can link your projects to those. So we have a number predefined. So this one's yet to do with patient experience, and click on that. Great. I can tag my project to help others find it, particular subjects or ways in which it needs to be tagged if you wish to do so. Start and end dates, locations, that sort of thing. So a few fields there, but it's quite quick to move through them. You can skip over them, you can come back to them later if needs be. Another couple of examples here of the sorts of governance you can introduce. By default, these steps aren't there. But again, for those that are perhaps a bit more mature in their kind of QI governance, if there is additional information you require up front, you can create additional kind of forms, additional charters, and people have got to go and fill those out here. You can allow a project to just be created, or you can have it so that it's approval is required, and you can kind of set up who that approval needs to go to, basically. So that's just an example of how that would work. I'm going to cancel out of this now, just a bit of a run through of how you would go about setting up a project. If I'd have sent that off to approval, hopefully someone would have approved it, and that would then unlock the rest of the project. But what we're going to do now is we're going to dive into a project that's already set up and have a bit of a look around populated project, basically. Hopefully what that's shown you already is just this fairly straightforward, kind of consistent approach to how you would start a project. You've always got one place to go and create a project. So it's kind of nice and straightforward. My Wi-Fi is struggling a little bit to load on project. Just while we're waiting for that to kind of load up, what we're going to have a look at within the project space then is kind of the rest of that project structure. So kind of the tools that would allow for. Go here. Here we go. New tab. So yeah, this is a project already been created, already been populated. So we're going to have a look through the rest of this. The information we created a second ago essentially would have populated this kind of general page. But now that the project's up and running, there are a number of other pages that appear. We're going to have a quick look through those: Driver diagram, measures and charts, these sorts of things. So again, part of about making it improvement accessible for staff is having these tools built into LifeQI. So it's nice and straightforward. They don't have to go look for a driver diagram template or go and create a brand new PowerPoint document and kind of build one of these things themselves. They can come in here. There's a tool that's redefined for them to build a driver diagram or build an SPC chart. And they can just kind of do it right here on the page. So here's one that we built earlier for this particular project. I can easily and simply make changes to it. I just click edit, and then I can drag and drop the boxes around, change the colors of the boxes. LifeQI will essentially draw the driver diagram for me and space it all out, draw the lines. So there's no real drawing that I have to do. It's going to take care of that for me. And as soon as I'm done making any changes, I click the save button, and there it is. I don't need to upload it or email it anywhere. It's kind of saved, and it's available for the rest of the organization to come and have a look at. Similarly, the measures and charts works in a kind of a similar way. There are charting tools built in here, whether you want to create run charts or control charts. Kind of the charts are kind of predefined. You essentially define what it is you're measuring. You can copy and paste your data in, and it will build the chart for you. So we've got a number of different charts and measures that we've set up for this particular project. Have a quick look into one of these. My internet connection is going to keep up today, struggling a little bit. Here's an example of one of the charts. So we've added a load of data in, we've pasted a load of data in, and it's produced the chart for me. So I don't have to physically create the chart myself. It's going to do any basic calculations, in this case, to create the percentage for me, plot that. It's going to plot the center line and all control limits for me. It's going to then look for any special cause variation in the data that I've got, and it highlights that using these pink boxes at the top. So I can see where I've got that kind of variation. I can then annotate the chart with these orange things and notes. I've got green boxes where I've linked in PDSA cycles, so I can see when I've been running my different tests of change. And the idea is, how do we just make it easy and straightforward for staff to create these charts? If they can paste the data into a spreadsheet, then it will produce the chart for them, essentially. It's kind of making that as nice and straightforward as possible. There's then the PDSA section. Build out your PDSAs for your particular project, just work through the standard template for that. And then beyond this core tool set, there are a few other areas to help the team come together and make progress and kind of collaborate, really. It's the discussions area within this project. You've got a files area, so you can really bring the team together and share whatever information is required kind of as part of that project, basically. So that's a quick look through why project, how that's sort of structured and how a team would build that out. As well as the kind of the core project area, there's a few different ways in which sort of groups of people can come together. I'll load up the groups. So a lot of this work will be organized according to groups. Groups are often these divisions, departments, directorates. Sometimes it might be multiple kind of organizations coming together, such as our Bay Area ICS Improvement Group. So we've got projects from all sorts of organizations in there, or kind of themes. So these are more audit related QI projects, or one of the ways, particularly from the skill set side of things, is you can create a group for a training cohort. Within that, then we can bring together all the people that are part of that training cohort. We can link in all of their projects so that the cohort can see each other's projects. We can hold discussion threads. And amongst that kind of group of people, and they can really make it a bit easier for that peer-to-peer kind of sharing and learning. Basically, they can see their projects, they can take part in discussion threads. The people that are running those courses can kind of share learning material through discussions and through the files area. So it's just a really useful way of bringing that cohort of people together. The projects that they run, they're not necessarily just isolated to this kind of cohort group. They can also be linked into a division or a directorate and feed into all the organization's normal reporting as well. It's just an extra group that they're able to kind of bring the kind of the training focused pieces together by having it in this group. So this same sort of thing works for divisions, directorates as well. Now, if I take it kind of upper level and look at sort of more the organization level, so this is our kind of made up hospital organization. Some of the things that I've mentioned earlier, such as priorities, this is where we've listed out all our organizational priorities. So staff can see those, staff can see all the different projects that are taking place across the organization. They can see the various groups, and some of which that we've kind of mentioned already. So as well as that projects list, they can come in here and kind of browse. They can browse based on a particular division or directorate that they happen to be part of. They can see who all the other improvers are within their organization. So it's really, again, just providing that visibility across the organization so that people can see kind of what's going on. So we've got that side of things. There's also then the more kind of reporting angle, and there's a few different levels and types of reporting, but just going to talk about very briefly about the analytics dashboards. So normally an organization would set up a whole range of these focused on either all of the projects or projects within a particular division or projects within a particular trading cohort. And the dashboards are there to help you extract key bits of information about the kind of the level of activity and the level of impact that you're seeing within those projects. So they tend not to be down into the detail of individual run charts and things like that, but it's more about these sorts of metrics around, how many projects are we running right now? How many of those are showing improvement or significant improvement or outstanding results, basically. These are all linked, so I can click on that number 3. It will show me the 3 projects that are showing outstanding results. We track things like month on month, how many projects are we running? We can see when we've had quiet periods and not started any more projects, and then more recently we've been starting more projects. We break it down by our divisions and we can see how many projects each division is running, and the colors basically tell me the level of progress that we're seeing of all of those projects. So this one's got less projects than that division, but they're all a bit more mature. I can see that from the progress scale. So I'm kind of seeing hot spots and cold spots, but also the level of impact, which is great. How's that changing over time? How many projects are we creating kind of each month? Those sorts of things. We track projects aligned to our key priorities. How much work are we actually doing against each of these priority areas, and how many of those projects are actually delivering improvement? So we begin to track what kind of return on investment are we getting for these 17 projects. Not a lot at the moment, only one of them's delivering any real improvement. So that's just a quick example of dashboard at sort of the organizational level. These all get tailored to organizations. What are the metrics that you care about? What are the charts that kind of KPIs that you need to track as part of your improvement governance? That's just an example. That'd be organization level, department level, division level, kind of various different levels. Okay, I'm going to circle back to these challenges quickly, and in a second kind of hand over to see whether there are any kind of questions. But just pulling up the challenges slide, hopefully that's given you a brief introduction to some of the key challenges we think organizations face, and touched on a few parts of the functionality that speak to some of those challenges. I guess I'm going to pause for a second. Andrew, have there been any questions or any points you want to chip in with?
Yeah, so I guess firstly, I'll just refer back to the surveys. Thanks for those of you who took part in the polls. So yeah, it seems like most people are struggling with engaging staff with QI, and also executing and tracking improvement projects, which isn't really a surprise. That seems to be, 2 very common themes. So yeah, thank you for your input on that. And unsurprisingly, a lot of you don't have a system for tracking your improvement work. I guess that's possibly why you're here today listening to this. So yeah, hopefully that's given you a good insight. We do have a couple of questions on the same topic actually, which is about, Jason, about support. So both around kind of support for organizations, but also for end users of the system and what that kind of looks like.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess the support that we provide as an organization does come in those sort of two formats, really. One is the kind of more proactive, dedicated support we provide to the QI teams within an organization. So we have a nominated person that works with that QI team to make sure that they understand how to set up Live QI, how to structure around your processes and governance, how to train that QI team in how to use Live QI, and how to introduce your staff to Live QI. So all organizations have a kind of a nominated person from us that works with you on an ongoing basis to do that. And then the other sort of form of support is more towards the end users, so your sort of frontline staff who would be using it to create projects. We provide, I guess, more reactive support in that sense. So there is a help desk here that will take emails, will take live chats with any kind of questions from end users on how to use the system. Plus, there's a wealth of online learning resources. There's a help center with how-to articles on how to do everything in the system, and a lot of those have got videos in. We run, I think, 2 or 3 times a month. There are webinars, there are sort of training webinars that anyone can join, and a lot of those are available on YouTube as well, so people can kind of watch those. So a lot of that learning done by end users is often kind of self-taught in that sense. But yeah, there's both that kind of proactive to the QI team and kind of more reactive to the end users, the resources available for them.
Thank you, Jason. I guess just one other question, if we've got time, is about how do the costs of Live QI work?
Sure. Yeah, an important one. The sort of the model that we operate is the cost is based on the number of users that you want to provide access to the system. So a user license model. So it allows for all levels of scale. So some organizations, particularly if they're small, will start quite small. If they're fairly new to QI, will start with a smaller number of licenses and scale that up over time as the number of staff engaged in QI grows. So does the kind of the cost. So it's fairly accessible in that sense. I guess more information can be provided on that. People are particularly interested, then please sort of drop your details in the chat or reach out to us afterwards, and we can set up a more specific conversation around actual costs if that's relevant.
Great. Thank you, Jason.
Okay, hopefully that was useful. I think we're just about at 30 minutes. Yeah, very brief introduction, and apologies. I think my broadband's been a little bit temperamental today, so we had to skip over a few things. But yeah, it's a useful introduction. As I said, we're keen to speak to anyone in more detail. So please do reach out. And yeah, the recording for this should come out within a day or two. So look out for an email from us with that, and feel free to share that with colleagues as you wish. Okay, thank you everyone. Have a good day.